Here we go with your Phil Steele Plus tour for this week. This is your December 11th update for you. And a nice 3-0 week last week. A perfect sweep. 3-0 for the Phil Steele Plus tour. Brings the record to 11-8 for the college plays over the last 4 weeks. Hopefully we've got another sweep in store for you today. I mean, it was Akron over Bowling Green. Akron breaking their long losing streak. Eastern Michigan plus 13.5 over Western Michigan, an outright upset winner, and Tulane over Memphis. So let's get another big sweep this week. And I'm going to give you 6 plays this week. It's a big card. Army-Navy. Isn't it unusual to see Army and Navy playing when it's not the only game on the weekend? But they are playing this week. And really, in my mind, there's the 3 best rivalries in college football are Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Auburn, and Army-Navy. So it is one of the best rivalries in college football. They're playing this weekend. Let's go ahead and kick off with that. Now, remember, the purpose of the Phil Steele Plus tour, I want you to get the most out of how to use Phil Steele Plus. There is so much available on Phil Steele Plus that some folks get this subscription to it and they don't utilize it to its fullest, so I want to show you everything that's available. Let's start with this Army-Navy game. Now, it's normally played at a neutral site. For the first time since 1943, this game is being played at one of the home fields. It's being played at Army. Army also hosts Air Force next week. Highly unusual that there's a game next week. This will be Navy's season final, so that's a little advantage to Navy, and you would expect with an under. The dog is 8-3 in this series. And let me show you one thing how to use the site. Now, the first thing here is click on the team name. You see how these team names are right here? When you click on the team name, the last 23 years matchups comes right to your fingertips. And here you can see, now let me explain how to use this. You see these are all neutral site games. There's only been 3 upsets, believe it or not, in this series. So the favorites won, but just doesn't cover an awful lot. Navy had dominated this series, and they lost 3 in a row to Army, and we color-coded it in red and green. The green means that you won the game. The red means that you lost, and this, as you see last year, Navy got back on top 31-7. Now over here, the green means that they covered. So as you can see, Navy covered these years, and they didn't cover these. And then we take a look at the underdog. Well, the favorite covered last year. The dog covered here. Dog covered here, dog covered here, dog covered here, dog covered here. Favorite did cover, dog. So the dog is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2. I added it up last night. It's 8-3 against the spread the last 11 years. But more importantly, the under in this game has hit 14 straight years. 14 straight years for the under in the Army-Navy game. Now, we don't show you that on this 23-year chart. So that's where you can go. And once again, if you want to know how Navy does, or look at how, example, Army does against Air Force, there is the Army-Air Force game, which takes place next week. There's your complete information on it. You can see Air Force has pretty much dominated the series, but Army's won 2 of the last 3. You can see this at your fingertips on every single game. And it also gives you the yardage on every game, everything like that. But if you want to look up unders, we just go to the last 40 years' results. Now let's take a look. And this takes you all the way back to 1976 for every team. So if you have a question about the spread on any team, it's right here at your fingertips. You have the spread records for every team dating back to 1976. Now, as I've mentioned before, they didn't do totals in 1996. You may not be old enough to remember that. Maybe you haven't been playing football, betting football that much. But they didn't really start doing totals till about 2000, and they only did it on marquee games. When they started putting totals on every game, that's when we started charting them here. And as you can see here, even in 2003, they didn't have totals on these non-marquee games. They did have them on conference games, so we charted them, and then they started putting totals on everything. So we give you totals all the way back to 2003. We give you halftimes all the way back to 2004. And I find halftimes vital. You really find out about the game. You could see teams that had big leads at the half or made major comebacks. But let's take a look at the over-under in this game. Navy-Army, go back to last year. Right over here is where the game went over or under. Under. They had a total of 38 points on 40.5. Under. Here is Army-Navy, under. Army-Navy, under. Army-Navy, under. Army-Navy, under. And I can tell you every year I have put out Army-Navy, under. Every year. And I just keep rolling with it. Army-Navy, under. 17-0. Army-Navy, under. 17-3, 13. Army-Navy under. So that's 9 straight years. Here is 10 straight years. Here's 11. Here is 12. Here is 13. 14 straight years of unders. Now, back then, when this streak first started, the total was like 49. Look at this. This total was 65, and they only scored 41 points. Then Vegas started getting a little smart. Even here, though, the total's 53. The total's 56.5, 52.5. This total was 69, and they only scored 41 points. They're getting smarter. Total on the game this year is 38. But that's what you would expect. And here's the thing with Navy, and something I want to show you. Last year, all right, let's go back to Navy, and I've brought this up on the Phil Steele Plus tour before. Back in 2018, they used a bunch of different quarterbacks. They used Malcolm Perry. They used Lewis. They used Abbey. They used a lot of different players. And they averaged 25 points per game, 349 yards per game. Last year, they turned the offense over to Malcolm Perry. They averaged 37 points per game, 456 yards per game. The game still went under. The final score was 31-7. And then this year, they lost Malcolm Perry, and they've lost their offense. 18 points per game, 293 yards per game. And if you click on individual player stats, you can see what they've used. You can see that Nelson Smith was the starter here. They've used different quarterbacks almost every game, alternated them on and off. Nelson Smith actually is their fullback. He's not their running quarterback. So they've used Morris Goslin, Arline Olsen. They've used a bunch of different QBs, and their offense has really struggled. Army's got a good defense. Army only giving up 289 yards per game. Now, this column out here tells you what they hold the opponents to versus their average. So, in other words, if a team comes in averaging 400 yards per game and you hold them to 300, you're plus 100. If you give up 500 to that same team, you're minus 100. Well, Army has held every single opponent underneath their season average this year. Every single one. Look at that. They've held them to a season low, third season, number 3, number 1 season low, number 1 season low. And they're holding opponents to 102 yards per game below their season average. That's number 6 in the country. And they're only averaging 293 yards per game. So Navy averaging 293 is held to 102 below their season average. You're looking at 191 yards offense. Now, when Army faces the option, they don't do great because teams, the advantage of the option is defenses don't face it normally. So you have 1 week to prep for the team. Your option offense on your scout team is nowhere near the option offense of an Army or a Navy or an Air Force or Georgia Southern or a Citadel or any of those option teams. That's the advantage of the option. Where you lose the advantage is when you play another option team. Now, if you take a look at a game earlier this year, they played Tulane. Tulane runs a lot of option. Army had 12 points, 303 yards. They played the Citadel. The Citadel is a pure option team. They're used to defending the option. Army had 14 points, 228 yards. So against option teams, they've had 14 and 13 or 12 points. And Navy, their offense has just struggled all year, and they're taking on a very good defense. So I don't see how Navy's going to score very much. I don't see how Army's going to score much. The total's low, but I've won with it for 14 straight years, guys. So I'm going to play it again. I'm going to go under 38 in the Army-Navy game. Under 38. And if one thing you do on Saturday, watch this game. It's one of the best rivalries in college football. You don't necessarily have to have a rooting interest, but it's just fun to watch. And it's two great teams and just a bunch of kids that, these guys are all mostly going into the military service after their senior year. You just got to love the dedication they have. So it's just a great game to watch. But take under 38 in this game. All right. Real quick, before I get to the rest of the plays, I want to throw this out at you. As always, I want to give you a discount if you do want to sign up for PressBox. PressBox went 3-3 last week. Guys, I got to tell you, I had Akron written down as one of the plays, and I covered it over. I put Central Michigan in there. So instead of 4-2, we went 3-3. 26-19, 58% the last 8 weeks in college. If you type in the code football is back, and all you have to do is go to the Phil Steele store here. When you go to the Phil Steele store, here's your PressBox College Edition. If you want, it's $20 for this week, but it's $39 for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Type in football is back. It'll take $10 off and make it $29. NFL, there's 4 weeks left. It's $20 an issue, $79. Type in football is back. You get it for $10 off. The college bowls, all the NFL playoffs. There's 4 weeks of NFL playoffs. There's probably 4 weeks of bowls. So that right there would be worth $160. I only priced it out at $89. That's the entire postseason. Football's back. I'll knock it down to $79. Your best bet, though, get all the rest of the college, 2 full weeks, NFL, 4 weeks, all the postseason, plus get a subscription to Phil Steele Plus. All this is a $256 value. When you go here, you're looking for the NFL and college package. You see it's $169. I'm giving you $50 off. Type in Elite Member when you sign up, and you'll get it for $119. That'll take you all the way through the Super Bowl. You'll get 4 NFL regular season, 4 NFL postseason. That right there is a $160 value. You get the college regular season, all the bowls, and you get the Phil Steele Plus subscription. And if you're already signed up for Phil Steele Plus and you want to join, you can deduct what you paid for Phil Steele Plus off this $119. Just call the office for that. Ask for Todd. He'll take care of you. So that's how to sign up to the Inside the Press Box, my weekly newsletter, which not only gives you a complete write-up on every game, but it also gives you my computer's forecast on every game. And I don't make a forecast on a game without looking at what my computer has forecasted on that game. All right, let's show you some other stuff on how to use the site and get you some free plays. We're going to take a look at this Baylor Oklahoma State game. Now, you guys know I've been going against Baylor quite a bit this season, and look at all this red here for Baylor. They've been losing quite a bit this season. Oklahoma State was a good play early on, but as you recall, when I put out the Vegas power ratings right here, this week, they were number 6 in the country, and the Vegas power ratings only had Oklahoma State number 16. They weren't rated that high, and look what's happened. Oklahoma State's lost 3 of the last 5. Now, this is an interesting thing out here, the individual game grade. Now, this has nothing to do with Oklahoma State. Doesn't factor in Oklahoma State at all. All it looks at is if you get this many yards and give up this many yards and points and this many points here against this opponent, that's what your grade is. And as you can see, they started out the season pretty strong, these big green ones. But look what they've done the last 4 weeks. And down here, this is an underused line. A lot of folks don't even realize this line's down here. The last 4 weeks, just take a look at these numbers right here. And over the last 4 weeks, Oklahoma State's minus 136 yards per game. Their defense, remember, it was one of the top defenses in the country at the start of the year. They're giving up 501 yards per game. And their offense, it's fell off the cliff. They're only averaging 365 yards per game. Where's the 593? Where's the 530? It's gone. Over the last 4 weeks, Oklahoma State is minus 136 yards per game and playing to an average game grade of 89.1. Now, Baylor, as I mentioned, I was against these guys. And I was against a lot of first-year head coaches without spring practice, didn't have the chance to learn their team in the spring, just getting a late start on the season. A lot of these teams, Mississippi State's another example, started out the season real slow, but now they're hitting their groove. Let's take a little closer look at Baylor. Look at their last 4 weeks. This is a team that was minus 89, minus 113, minus 107. Over the last 4 weeks, how about plus 20 yards per game? And I got to tell you, I had Oklahoma last week against Baylor, and I watched every play of that game. I was very impressed with Baylor's defense. Look at this. They held Oklahoma to 269 yards offense, 76 yards rushing. Let's take a little closer look at Oklahoma, just to show you this. And I love to put these two teams side by side all the time. Look at Oklahoma's offense. All this big green stuff here, they were averaging a huge amount of yards per game. They got held to 269. They hadn't been held below 414 yards. They were fully loaded. They've got Stevenson back at running back. Stevenson played 15 carries, 50 yards. He had been popping it prior to that. They held Oklahoma's potent rush attack to 76 yards. First team to hold them there. The only red numbers on Oklahoma's offense right here, Baylor last week. How about that? And Baylor's offense, not exactly lighting it up, but they're still doing just as good. Let's go back to Oklahoma State. And as mentioned, I always like to put the two teams side by side, home team on the right. These guys are averaging 365 yards per game to 359, so they're doing about the same. I like Charlie Brewer at quarterback. Spencer Sanders only has a 7-6 ratio. Charlie Brewer has a 14-8 ratio, and they're playing to an average game grade of 100 the last 4 weeks. So if you look at just the last 4 weeks, which is really the current form these teams are in, Baylor should be a 12.5-point favorite, and they're a 5.5-point dog. I'm taking the Baylor Bears plus 5.5. I'm going to call for the upset. We're going to call for Baylor to upset Oklahoma State this week, and that is your number 2 selection this week. Got another last 4-week play for you. And by the way, when you look at this, when you have access to Phil Steele Plus, I do want to remind you, you can click on individual stats and see how each player is doing this year. You can see who the running backs are and the quarterbacks and the top receivers, etc. You can go back and look at last year's leaders and see how they're doing in each of the games that last year. You can go back to 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, and 2000, all the way back. We got all these stats right there. You could see Baylor was a pretty great team. Then they had the probation hit, and then people thought Matt Rule was dumb. Remember here, they took over, they fired their coach here, or that happened, and then they lost their last 6 games. Here, they came into Matt Rule stepped into a tough situation, got the team turned around. Look what he had going for him last year. And now this year, most of the team left, new head coaching staff. So naturally, you've got red this year. Another thing you want to know when the coaches were there, just go here to your last 40 years results. Not only does it give you the spreads here, but down here, you can see it was Art Briles took over 4-8, 4-8, 7-6, 10-3, 8-5, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3. Then Jim Grobe was the interim head coach that year. They won their first 6, but they were sort of a fake team the first 6 games, and then lost their last 6 games. And then Matt Rule, you see what he did. And then Dave, well, this says Dave Aranda, but that was really Matt Rule last year. I'll have Todd get that corrected. Matt Rule was the head coach of Baylor last year. We do get a typo, and if you guys ever get a typo, definitely just go ahead and hit us up, email us, and let us know, and we'll get it corrected right away. We take a look at Oklahoma State. Oh, we don't have to go back and look at all that, but that's on every single team. So last 40 years results tells you how potent the offense was, the defense, what they did in Big 12 play. And this makes me think for just 1 second, I want to take you to Iowa State. And the one thing I want to show you is their Big 12 record. Let's go look at Iowa State's Big 12 record. The job Matt Campbell's done is remarkable. Let's take a look at their conference record: 3-4, 4-3, 2-4, 2-4. Look at these losing records: 1-7. There's a 5-3, 0-8, 0-8, 4-4, 4-4. They have not strung together winning conference records since Matt Campbell took over. 5-4, 6-3, 5-4, and this year only 2 losses. Remarkable job. If you go back and look at the history of Iowa State in conference play, it's been horrific. But Matt Campbell's got this whole thing turned around. He's one of the hot properties in college. But all this is at your fingertips on every team. All that information, all 130 teams. All right, let's move on to our next game. We've already discussed why I like Baylor. Let's take a look at the Ball State game against Western Michigan this week. And these two teams look like they're headed in different directions. And it's the battle for the MAC West title between Western Michigan and Ball State this week. Winner of this game wins the MAC West title, gets to play Buffalo in the championship. Now, I got to hand it to Mike New. Came into the season with the motto, Detroit or bust. And then they lost their opening game against Miami. And I'm like, well, poor Mike New. I mean, it's his 5th year. Once again, if you click on last 40 years results, you can see when the coach was here. Mike New took over in 16, 4-8, 2-10, 4-8. Last year, it sure looked like Mike New was going to have a winning season, didn't it? He starts out here, he's 4-3. They look really good. Then they lost 4 in a row and didn't have a winning year. Probably needed to get a winning season this year. Then they open up the year this year 0-1, Detroit or bust. Oh, boy. I'm probably going to lose one of my friends in the coaching profession here, but turned it around. Beat Eastern Michigan, beat Northern Illinois, clubbed Toledo. And I want to show you something about this Toledo game. You go to the box score, and the box scores are provided by collegepressbox.com. These things are beautiful. They not only to show you the score of the game, then they show you here how they scored. And as you can see, Ball State's in control. Middle of the third quarter, this thing's 24-3, Ball State. It gives you the stats for the game, gives you the individual leaders, how the players did for the game, and then it gives you defensive stats, which I love, participation, who your starters were, drive charts, and then it takes you through the play-by-play of every game. And I go through the play-by-play of every single game that's played every weekend. Now, I do have 12 TVs on, and I'm watching them, but I also then go through the play-by-play to refresh exactly what I was watching and really get you up to date on all the teams. So as you can see, they're in complete control against Toledo. And then last week, once again, complete control against Central Michigan, 45-14. Central drives down and gets a touchdown late here. They were in total domination of that game. So Ball State's playing great football. Let's take a look at their last 4 weeks. 92.5 is their average game grade. Now we take a look at Western. They crush Akron in the opener. Toledo, they got fortunate. Once again, let's click and look at these boxes because these boxes are available on every game. Use them. You learn about the game. You see Western beat Toledo, and you're like, okay, but look at this. You're in the fourth quarter. There's a minute to go in a game. Toledo leads 38-28. Western Michigan scores a touchdown, recovers an onside kick, gets another touchdown with 17 seconds left. A miracle 41-38 win. Then they get past Northern Illinois. Let's go ahead and check out that Northern Illinois box score. Northern is the visitor at Western. Northern's winning this game 27-20. Once again, Western battles back, ties the game, gets a late field goal, pulls out the win. Last week, not so fortunate, they lose to Eastern Michigan 53-42. How they do in the last 4 weeks? Well, you throw away that Akron game. You just look at these 4 games. They're playing to an 84.8 game grade. So Ball State right here is about 8 points better, throwing, let's say, a 2-point home edge. Ball State by 9.7 points here, and they're only a 2-point favorite. They just have to win the game. You've got a team that's playing great, dominated Toledo, dominated Central Michigan. Western got fortunate to win the Toledo game. Comeback win here. Comeback win here. Did not come back here. They lost that game. And one more thing I want to point out, and these individual stats, you should use them all the time. Now, I'm watching the Ball State-Western Michigan game. I watched it last night. I watched it while I have my 12 TVs on, but you can't listen to what's going on. But then last night when I watched the game and listened to what was going on, Caleb Huntley here, look at his numbers, 437, 5.5. Click on individual stats. Caleb Huntley has not played the last 2 games. He was dressed. He was on the sideline. He looked ready to go. He's got bruised ribs. I think he'll be back. And what happened was Caleb Huntley was their workhorse. 130 yards rushing, 204, 103. I think he'll be 100% here for this game. And look at last week. They sort of went away from the run game the last 2 weeks without Huntley, but yet they still won and they still dominated. Getting Huntley back along with Plitt, I like that combination. And their defense playing pretty good. Look at this. They held their last 2 opponents to 82, 113 yards per game, below their season average. Add it all up, another last 4-week play. I'm taking Ball State -2 over Western Michigan. I do want to point out something about this, and there is no FCS games this week. There will be FCS in the spring, though. And something I want to show you is available on all these FCS teams when the spring does roll around. Let's go take a look at a team like, let's say North Dakota State, because if you talk FCS, that's what you want to talk. Now, you see they did play 1 game this year, but they'll be playing in the spring. I think that was because Trey Lance is going to be turning to the NFL. Why not give him a game to play? Trey Lance had a phenomenal year last year. But you get individual stats on all the FCS teams. So you want to become an expert on FCS. This site's for you. It gives you the games. Once again, color-coded green and red. Yes, not a lot of red here for North Dakota State. Not a lot of red here. Not a lot of red here. These guys win a championship every year, don't they? But you can have research all the way back to 2011. You want to know how they did against Western Illinois in the last years? You just go back here and take a look. And it's all right at your fingertips. And the individual player stats are there for this year, for 19, for 18, individual player stats. You want to see how the players did? That's all available. So do keep in mind, when FCS rolls around, you'll be wanting Phil Steele Plus to know. You'll become an expert. You'll amaze your friends with your FCS knowledge. But let's talk about another game here. We'll go to Florida State and Duke for this week. And we're going to take a look at Florida State's at home. I'm going to put them on the right. And I'm going to put Duke on the left. Now, both teams are struggling this year. Let's take a look at the red. All right, we got a lot of red here. Both teams are struggling. But one thing I want to point out, and this one's more of a series play. It's just amazing to me. We're going to click on the Florida State-Duke series. You see that Florida State has won every single game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They've actually won all 20 meetings against Duke. Now here, they didn't cover these 4 years, but look what they were laying. 30, 44, 40, 35. They usually cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that last year was a push at 7. Do you know in those 20 meetings, the closest win for Florida State, closest game, was 7 points. They usually win in the 30s when they play this game. But let's take a look. There's not a single game in here decided by less than 7, except for this one. And let's see what happened prior to 1997. Once again, you've got that at your fingertips. We would just look here for a Duke game. Here's a Duke game. They won 44-7 in 96. They won 70-26 here. They won 59-20 here. They won 45-7 here. They won 48-21 here. So as you can see, there's not been a single game decided by 7 or less. Why is that important? Florida State's laying 5 points. So you have a team that's never lost, that's never won by less than 7, and they're only laying 5 points. Now, is Duke a juggernaut? Well, they played Georgia Tech. Yeah, the same Georgia Tech team that lost to Pitt last night. They played Miami. Look at this. They lost to Georgia Tech by 23 points. They lost to Miami by 48. They're not playing in great current form. Now, it's tough for me to say Florida State's playing in great current form. They're not. And is this Florida State team the Florida State team of years past? No, they're not. But they have absolutely dominated Duke. They've never lost a game in series history by less than 7, and they're only -5 in this game. It's a series play. It's Florida State -5 over Duke. 2 more plays for you. I think you'll like both of them as well. Pretty good reasoning behind them. Quick mention for you. I'm not going to give you an NFL play. Remember, I was struggling on those. But I do want to point out that we do have information on every NFL team. So if you enjoy watching the NFL, you want to learn a little bit about them, let's go take a look at, take a look at the Minnesota Vikings, for example. Vikings started out the season horrifically. They were 1-5, but now all of a sudden they're 5-1, playing a lot better football. You can see how the red-green numbers are doing. You want to see how the individual players are doing. It's all right here. How's Dalvin Cook doing? Pretty good. 206, 96, 115, 120. What is Cousins doing? Wow, look at this. 3-1, 3-0, 3-0, 2-1, 3-0, 1-0 ratio. So 4-0, 6-1, 9-1, 12-1, 15-2 ratio. He had an 11-10 ratio to start the year in that 1-5 streak. Now he's got a 15-2 ratio. I didn't even know that. I just learned that by clicking on the individual stats. I don't really follow the NFL. I follow college football. But now I'm an expert on college football. I can tell you everything you want to know about the Minnesota Vikings. Their defense playing a lot better. Look at these numbers as opposed to earlier in the year. They're a much better team, and you could tell they're winning more football games. Once again, I don't follow them, but you also get the box score on these games. You want to see how the Carolina game went. We get these from NFL.com. These are beautiful, these game books as well. Everything on the game, including the play-by-play. And it's all right here at your fingertips every game, and this goes all the way back. You got box scores on the NFL games going back. You got individual leaders on the stats for every NFL team. And just like the college, Minnesota this week is playing Tampa Bay. We'll get these Jacksonville numbers updated from last week shortly. Here's how they've done against Tampa Bay. They've won their last 2. They had lost the previous 5. At your fingertips every game. Look at this. 4 straight upsets in this series. How about that? 6 of the last 8 games have been upsets. Once again, I didn't even know Minnesota's playing Tampa Bay this week. Now I do, and I can give you this information at your fingertips. That's how quick you become an expert. NFL, FCS, FBS. All you have to do is sign up to Phil Steele Plus. Once again, go to the store here, and it's just $49, Scott, for crying out loud. $49 takes you through the Super Bowl, and then you want to get it for the FCS as well. But let's get back. Let's finish off your final 2 plays for the week. We go to your team pages, and on your team pages, Fresno State is playing New Mexico. We're going to put Fresno on the left, and we are going to put New Mexico on the right because they're the home team. How about that? Now, New Mexico's been playing their home games in Vegas. Did you know that? But I believe this one's back in New Mexico, so it's unusual that they're back at home, but it's not really like they're familiar with their home because they've been playing their games in Vegas. So anyway, we take a look at New Mexico. They opened the season miserably, 0-5. Guess what? First-year head coach, no spring practice. They had some spring practices, actually. But last week they surprised Wyoming. They beat them 17-16. They gave up 283 yards rushing. I think it was more Wyoming making mistakes in this game that cost them. But then New Mexico actually dominating the game. They got outgained by 59 yards. Still not overwhelmed with New Mexico. Let's see who their quarterback is. You can see they went to Connor Gunnell. Trey Hall, of course, is out. Tuioti is out as well. And then Chavez has played a little bit. They've used different quarterbacks. Really not a lot of continuity there. Now we take a look at Fresno. You know, Fresno opened the season with an upset loss to Hawaii. But look at this. They blasted Colorado State by 21. They beat UNLV by 13, and that was on the road. UNLV's a team similar to New Mexico. They beat Utah State 35-16 on the road, 19 points. Once again, that's a team similar to New Mexico. Look, New Mexico lost to Utah State, 41-27. And then last week against Nevada, how about 599 yards offense for Fresno to just 416? Now, Nevada may be the best team in the Mountain West Division, and they outgained them, 599 to 416 last week. So it was a tough loss for Fresno, but this is a team that's moving the football. Jake Hainers got 11-4 ratio. Ronnie Rivers Let's see how Ronnie's done this year. Ronnie had 133, 132. Last week he only had 69 yards, but Nevada's got a tough run D. Let's go look at New Mexico's run D, 356, 209, 283. They're giving up about 7 yards per carry. You think Ronnie Rivers going to have a good game there? Now let's go take a look at Nevada's run D, the team he struggled against last week. Nevada has a good run defense. Do you see any red numbers here? I see a run defense giving up 121 yards per game, 3.4. And yet, look at this. Fresno had 132 yards above what they normally allow. So that is a very good performance by Fresno last week against Nevada. And now they're taking on a much lighter New Mexico team this week. Now, the other thing I want to point out in this game, as I mentioned, their wins are by 21, 13, and 19. They're laying 12 points. So that's a plus. The New Mexico offense is, let's go back and click on New Mexico because they're the home team here. Their season, over the last 4 weeks, they are minus 51 yards per game here. Their offense is gaining over the last 4 weeks. And over the last 4 weeks, just 330 yards per game. Fresno, 515 yards per game. Now let's take a look at the series. Click on the series history. Oh, look at this. Fresno is 6-0 straight up, 6-0 against the spread. I like that. They went into New Mexico and won by 31. They won by 11. They won by 17, and they won by 8. But those New Mexico teams are a little bit better than this year's squad, which is in a definite rebuilding year this year. So you've got a Fresno team that's won all their games by over 12. You've got a Fresno team that's got a much better offense, 515, 330. You got a Fresno team that's 6-0 straight up in ATS in the series. We're going to go with Fresno State minus 12 over New Mexico. Let's wrap it up with your final game this week, guys. We're going to take a look at a rivalry game. It's Virginia at Virginia Tech. And a couple things I want to point out to you in this one. We're going to put Virginia on the left because they're the visitor. And that's going to be an important statement here. Let's take a look, how Virginia has done this year. Now, on the road, they played at Clemson. They lost. They played at Wake Forest. They lost. They played at Miami. They lost. They are 0-3 on the road. Flip open your magazine. You will see that Mendenhall has a great record at home and a poor record on the road. Well, that's played true this year. At home, they beat Duke. They did lose to NC State. Beat North Carolina, Louisville, Abilene Christian, Boston College. The road team has won exactly one game in Virginia games this year. And as I mentioned, this holds true to form. Look at last year. They lost at Notre Dame, lost at Miami, lost at Louisville. These were 2 games were away from home. They pretty much won all their home games last year. Virginia's a really tough team at home. On the road, they tend to lose. Okay, that's one part. Now let's take a look at part number 2 here. And we're going to put Virginia over here. Once again, the half times are valuable. When you look at these halftime scores here, did you know that last week, you can look at this score here, 45-10, hey, Clemson blew Virginia Tech out of the water. Well, look at this. It was 17-10 at the half. And look at the yards. Virginia Tech had 214 yards. Clemson had 215. They stood there with one of the best teams in the country and were 1 yard short. A key play in the game happened here, this 66-yard fumble return for a touchdown in the third quarter, and then they got the 65-yard pass, 50-yard run. But Virginia Tech played a lot better. So they impressed me last week. Even in a 45-10 loss, they impressed me. Now remember, Khalil Herbert's their top running back. And Khalil Herbert's a guy that got injured here. As you can see, didn't have as many yards here, didn't have as many attempts here. Last week, he got back to 21 attempts. I'm looking for Khalil Herbert to take off this week. He's averaging 7.6 yards per carry. Gives him a big edge at running back. Both teams have mobile quarterbacks. Both teams have decent passing games, about the same. Virginia Tech hitting 61% with a 9.5 ratio. These guys, Brendan Armstrong hitting 60% with a 16.8 ratio. But let's go look at the series history. And this is one that when you click on the series history, Virginia Tech absolutely dominant. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 straight wins. In this series. And last year they lost. Now, last year they lost 39-30, and you might say, well, that was a blowout. Now, let's check the box score. This game was led by Virginia Tech, 30-27 late. Virginia tied it. Virginia's got a field goal with 1:23 left in the game to take a 3-point lead. And then Virginia Tech got tackled in the end zone, fumbled, and they fell on it for a touchdown with 1:01 left. So it looks like Virginia dominated the game. But look at this. Virginia Tech had 25 first downs Virginia had 14. Virginia Tech had, so they had the first down edge. They led the game. They just lost it late, and then that fumble made it a misleading final. They're playing with legitimate revenge here. I rarely put revenge out there because, teams that have losing records, they're playing, 11 revenge games a year, and they're probably losing those games as well. But when you won all those games straight in a row in the series against your rival, and you're coming off a loss, now you're at home, you're in your final game, you're not going to a bowl game this year. You've already got 6 losses. You only have 4 wins. Virginia will be going to a bowl game, so it's more important to Virginia. They're fully loaded. They've got Herbert and Hooker at quarterback, or running back at quarterback, and they played much better than the final score to indicate against Clemson. Add it all up, I am going to go with Virginia Tech, and they are -3 over Virginia. Oh, one more thing I want to point out real quick is in last week's game at half, Virginia was actually outgained by Boston College 280 to 227. And something I want to point out, if we look at the Boston College page, I forgot to mention this. Go to the Boston College page. Here we are. Let's take a look at the individual stats. Who is Boston College's top player? Well, it's probably Phil Jurkovec. And Phil Jurkovec, oh, look at this, did not play against Virginia. Who's their top running back? David Bailey. David Bailey, oh, look at this, did not play against Virginia. Boston College without Jurkovec, I'm sorry about that, and Bailey, actually had the yardage edge at the half, 280 to 227 against Virginia. And that was at Virginia, where Virginia's tough. So add it all together, I like Virginia Tech -3 over Virginia. There you go. Hope you learned a little bit how to use Phil Steele Plus to its fullest. There's even more stuff up there. Last 20 years leaders are over here. Go ahead and click on that. Draft history. You want to get any draft pick for the team dating back to when the draft started. It's on there. But take advantage of your discounts. Join Phil Steele Plus today. And let's hope we had a 3-0 week last week. Let's go for 6-0 this week. Have yourself a great weekend. I'll be back with you next Friday with your next Phil Steele Plus tour.